we get our challenges from external stakeholders. And lots of the time, the perception is there that students will work for them. But that's not the case in our case. Students have the ownership. So we really need to communicate very clearly that nobody owns a challenge, but somebody can own a solution, right?
Welcome to the Strategic Partnership podcast series. My name is Tasha Day, Project Officer at UIIN, and I'm your host for today. In this episode, we bring you the second part of our conversation with Lieven de Somville, Lab Master at 3ID Labs, and Daria Casina, an international business development professional and current labber, participating in their program. Make sure to listen to part 1 if you haven't already. From navigating partnerships with external stakeholders to fostering a culture of co-learning. Join us this week as we uncover the impact of 3ID Labs and envision the future of education. You say that it depends on the way that the universities are structured and how funding works and what is possible for students to do in terms of funding and support. How does that work at your institution? Is it a supportive environment for these kind of initiatives? And are there any kind of challenges that you face in terms of that?
Yes, of course, we encounter lots of challenges, and I think nowhere in the world at the moment that we have that fostering environment. I might even say that lots of us are in crisis. And when we look at financial circumstances at the moment in Flemish education, it's not a time where people are throwing with money, right? So
Yeah.
yes, it's a big challenge, and especially in that. But what I experience is that lots of our managers are really aware of the fact that interdisciplinary learning is needed, that there is a big need for that in society. Mm-hmm. But for example, in our university, we are going to organizing ourselves into interdisciplinary learning. It's not set yet, but because we already survived 5 years and we have nice feedbacks, but we also have our challenges, of course, people starting to be aware of the fact that yes, this is needed. But for example, now at the moment we are in a crucial decision-making process where our leaders will have to decide, will we continue with 3ID Labs as a living lab and with all other labs in our university, or will we go back to studying and let people study only within their discipline, because it has to be a deliberate choice in the vision and the mission of your institution to have this kind of learning into their curriculum, because it really taps into all kind of processes in your university. For example, we are very dependent on if programs, for example, international business program, if our podiatry program, if our teachers program, if they basically publish 3ID Labs as an opportunity for their last year students. Right? If our colleagues are not doing that in their home program, then we won't have an income of students. And then, of course, we shoot ourselves in the foot as an institution.
Yeah. No, it's tough, and best of luck going forward. I really hope that the value of the 3ID Labs is seen and supported going forward. And back to the external stakeholders, I would love to know a little bit about the process involved in establishing these external partnerships, because it seems that as it is, the 3ID Labs has these kind of functional relationships with these stakeholders who are really involved in the program. Was it always like this, and how did you get to where you are now?
I think in the beginning, when we were more of an educational module, we had lots of people who wanted to collaborate with us because they said, oh my God, I would have wanted to do something like this when I was a student. And there was a sincere sympathy for the program and for what we were trying to do. But more and more, as we become a living lab, we also have these partners which we have contracts with and which we organize ourselves with. But we always try to look for a win for our partners.
Yeah.
Because, for example, lots of our partners, in the beginning, we thought we won't find anyone because we will have to pay them. But then they said, actually, we're not interested in the pay because we know that you guys are too poor to pay our our regular rates. But what we are very interested in is these young, bright minds who graduating from you guys and who actually have that skill set, who really need, because there's a real scarcity on the market for self-directed, self-reflective professionals. And in that sense, for example, we also always organize a network reception after our gates. So our labbers can also get in contact with our jury members. And we had quite a few of labbers who found a job through extending their professional network by doing gate presentations, by doing their research, etc., etc.
Yeah, it's great to hear these external stakeholders that are interested in nourishing this and then ending up working with these young, bright minds. And Daria, would you be able to tell us a little bit about how in this process so far, working on projects with these external stakeholders is enhancing your learning experience?
Yeah, it's not easier to manage external stakeholders. Our first obstacle on the case was that we were thinking, oh, we are students, they will be the retirement homes. Huh? They will be very open to see us, to speak with us, because of course we are there to help them. But we realized that they don't really care too much, that we have to make our way through, or they don't have time, or they just don't want for whatever reason. So we came back to the labs, we sat with our team. We were like, why is that? For us, it was not clear from the beginning. And then we Googled a bit, we talked to people. Okay, there is a certain negative image in the media. So they might think we are there to assess them, to judge them, to put attention on them. We're like, okay, how we can approach that differently? We came back to them and we started to explain how it can be beneficial for them as well. So you learn to first make decisions on the go, basically. You learn to observe without judging. You learn to ask questions. You learned to, and that's empathy that Lieven was referring to. You learn to understand the motives of other people and not judge and act within that framework.
Definitely. And speaking of these kind of challenges when you're working with these external stakeholders and perhaps they don't exhibit such a trust in students and the university programs to begin with, Lieven, could you perhaps tell us about any more challenges that you faced in this process with engaging with these stakeholders and what has helped you to overcome the challenges when working with external stakeholders?
A big one is how do external stakeholders see our relationships? Because one thing I did mention, but I didn't say it explicitly, is that we get our challenges from external stakeholders, from these organizations who we collaborate with. And lots of the time, the perception is there that students will work for them. But that's not the case in our case. Students have the ownership. So we really need to communicate very clearly that nobody owns a challenge, but somebody can own a solution, right? So often we need to manage expectations on beforehand and also give a clear enough sense of what their investment will be in terms of time and what they will get back from it, right? So yeah, we've lost partners already who were disappointed because they expected that students would work for them, and then students had their own perspectives. And so to me, that's really the biggest challenge, and also a challenge we will have to solve in the future, because when we work together with these research groups, and we really need to think about how we can embody that sense of ownership, because to us, the belief that students have that they have the ownership over their solution, that's the most important. And how we embody it, that can be done in different forms.
Yeah, and an interesting kind of a social dynamic when you're balancing the ownership between the external partners and the students, I can imagine. And how do you then manage the kind of feedback, improvement, iteration process in these collaborations with external stakeholders? Do you have opportunities to talk, to sit down with the stakeholders and incorporate the kind of feedback and experiences from them into the reiteration of the 3ID labs each year?
That's something I will mostly address to Daria, because Daria has most contact with the external stakeholders, right? Because they are doing with every relationship is very much tailored to the needs of the learning, but also to the needs of the external stakeholder.
So you need to understand what they want, try to merge what you want.
Yeah.
We are going to be open. We ask direct questions. What do you want? How do you see it? Let's see how we can incorporate it. Because the goal is to create a solution that will be beneficial for everybody, a win-win solution.
Yeah.
And you need to communicate openly. But of course, you will have those who will not be open for that. But okay, we cannot be nice to everybody. We cannot be a desirable team for everybody to solve their issue. Sometimes they just don't want. But those who want, you're open with them and you try to align your final vision that you're on the same page.
Maybe, Tasha, if I can add to that.
Yeah.
If we look at the Entrecomp framework, mobilizing others is one of the competencies which is there. So what we then do with our labbers is every Friday afternoon, for example, we organize a session which is called Learning How to Learn. And there we go through our labbers in the experiential learning circle. Right, so we talk about, all right, so what have you done? What's your concrete experience? What did you observe? How is your reflection on that? Or the learning community gives that to each other, says, hey guys, but we've tried this, or look up in that book, or for example in this case, look at the book of Seven Habits of Stephen Covey, read a chapter on begin with the end in mind, or read a chapter on how to create win-win. And then students can go back and do the active experimentation. And this is how this relearning will happen the whole time in the lab. So we try to create that culture and that structure in order to get that learning ongoing the whole time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great. Could you maybe talk to us about how you maintain these like ongoing relationships with the stakeholders who are participating in the 3ID labs beyond the duration of the specific projects or iterations of the program?
Yeah, what we've started doing now is working together with our research groups from our different programs, much more, to make like an in between the external stakeholders and our university. So our research groups would also benefit from the cooperation within our semi-professional environment. To us, we often have new cases. So we often have new stakeholders. To us, it's important that stakeholders engage with us if they also see a real win in that. They come out of the networks that we have built over the years. And some stakeholders, they only collaborate with us for one cohort, and other stakeholders we are already collaborating with for 3 or 4 different years. And they bring in different wicked challenges. We even have worked with the same wicked challenge for a few years because that's the specificity, that's a difficult word, for a wicked challenge. By doing research or in doing research in that, you can have a lot of different point of views. We have now 2 teams working on the same challenge. They will come with a different point of view. So we can keep on collaborating with these different stakeholders. If the processes are very smooth within your institution, of course, you can share lots and lots of stakeholders, but that is really down to what's the structure, what's the culture, what's the mission, what's the vision of your university. Still working on this at the moment, really much.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a big topic of conversation we find in our research and consultancy projects at the moment as well. So moving on to the impact of the 3ID Labs project, Viva, could you share with us any examples of how projects or consultancy that's taken place in the 3ID Labs have led to real-world implementation or positive societal change within the organizations that you collaborate with?
I think the first impact we have is that students are forming themselves as reflective practitioners who are able to create an impact on society, right? So before you asked what knowledge, what skills do you gain in these labs, I think maybe the biggest one is that you gain that belief that you can have that actual impact on society. Yeah. For example, if I look at some of the projects which has been done last semester, we had one of the teams who was working on this design challenge. How might we attract citizens of Ghent to participate in activities around food? We're acting on food policy as the main target. They have created a kind of a winter festival, which they continue doing at the moment, and they continue collaborating together. We had a other team who was working on the design challenge. How might we foster companionship for residents in elderly homes? And they have designed an Hart and Herstel cafe. People who are speaking Dutch will understand, but it's translated into Heart and Repair Cafe, where elderly came to a specific place and where students and so on could come to let their clothes be repaired. We had another team working on socially deprived youngsters in the neighborhoods of Ghent. And they created this creativity hub in collaboration with the Box Club, who was established in that neighborhood. We had students working on sustainability who created a seasonal product label, which tried to stimulate our consumers to buy more seasonal products. We had students who made a non-profit organization to work with children who were dying of cancer, because they found out that these children, they also suffer from loneliness because they get excluded from their friends, and they organize the youth movement together with animals, etc., etc. These are some of the examples which are made over time.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for sharing, because those examples just seem like really exciting and inspiring and amazing that these students have been able to get these initiatives going and working on problems that are important to us as a society. So thank you. I feel very inspired by that. And Daria, maybe reflecting on your time so far in the program, what would you say has been the most rewarding aspect?
The abundance of knowledge. You learn from everywhere, from everybody, and that's really valuable. There is a library, there is always labbers who are there to guide you to where you can look. There are also your team members who you learn from as well. We're all from different backgrounds, as we discussed. There is a whole cohort where you can ask whatever you need, that I find very rewarding, and the freedom also. I really like that sense of ownership, that you can create your own path based on your own goals.
That's really nice to hear. And what advice would you give to a student who was considering joining the 3ID Labs program or similar interdisciplinary initiatives?
Oh, I would say go for it.
Nice.
Go for it and be curious. Keep an open mind, hear everything, challenge yourself, be open, be flexible, adopt a growth mindset, and learn how to learn. Keep doing it.
Love the words of advice. And for both of you, I would love to know what your ideal higher education system of the future would be like. Here at UIIN, we love to look forward to the future and chat to our community and our partners about what could be potentially an ideal future for education that allows students to develop this agency, this ownership, and this go-getter confidence attitudes.
I would say the inclusion of the real world. I really think that the real world should come into educational system. Students should be able to work on real life challenges. They should go outside, they should speak to people, they should learn by doing. I really think that's the future. It's very important because this way they learn to be flexible and they adapt to the changes that our world goes through. They become resilient. So it's really important.
The ideal system, I don't know, it's such a complex item relating to culture, relating to learning objectives. But what I do think is that if you look at traditional education, often you hear we divide them into hard skills and soft skills, which to me, that name soft skills is already a very wrong term, because if you really apply soft skills, it's very hard to receive feedback and
Yeah.
to do that with a growth mindset. So let's divide into human skills and hard skills. So to have more of a balance within these two, right? Of course, these disciplinary skills, engineers, they really need mathematics to know, of course, but it's also necessary to have these human skills to be able to be empathic, and also in order to create something, because we can create something and it might be feasible, it might be viable, but if we haven't done our research good enough, it won't be desirable for our end user. So therefore, you also need these human skills. So I think there needs to be more of a balance between the human skills and to the factual skills. And I also think we should go away from a teacher-centered way of organizing our university to a learner-centered university. For example, sometimes in universities, you see this separation from the teacher room, the student rooms. Here we have our office amongst the students. We have that learning environment. And I think there is lots to learn from being learner-centered and not being teacher-centered, which doesn't mean we do everything what students want, but we
Mhm.
try to understand what students need. That's
Yeah.
a completely different thing. Just before this webinar, we had a community meeting and made some agreements. And now Daria is laughing because she knows what I'm gonna say. We had a community meeting and we agreed something, but half of the labbers didn't follow up what we agreed. That's not what they want to hear, but it's still what students or labbers or people in our learning community needed to learn that because we want to have a culture of accountability. And if we say something that we will do it, then we will also actually do it. So
Yeah.
that's a difference from the need and from the want.
Yeah, really good point. Thank you so much. And we have one question from Al. How large are the interdisciplinary teams of students that participate in the 3ID labs?
Our learning environment is designed for 40 students max, and we start in the beginning with student teams of 3, right? So we have a design student, we have a business student, and we have a human science student. That's the theory in order to have these interdisciplinarity. As I mentioned before, students are working towards the gates, and at the gate, the jury will decide which cases, but also at the same time, I'm saying which teams will continue and which will have to stop. And we will have our job fair. So the teams will go from teams from 3 people to 4 to 5 people. In another month, we'll have another gate. So it means that the teams will go from 4 to 5 to 6 and 7. It also means that you get a larger complexity in leading a team from 3 towards a team of 7 or 8 people. So therefore, it has an effect on the motivation of the teams. Yeah, we really want to pass gate 1, but also it has an effect on the complexity of the goal setting, of the personal goal setting, which labbers do.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for being here today. I've really enjoyed this discussion, and I think it's really valuable to hear from you and have this kind of concrete illustration of this case study in our repertoire as UIIN. It's been amazing to talk to you. If you have any final words, go for it. And if not, I will close the presentation.
I'll leave the final word to Daria before I say, like, we believe that education should be reformed in a certain way. And we're also struggling every day. We're also trying every day. When you want to reach out and we can collaborate or we can share our insights, we're always open to do that.
I want to add that this kind of initiatives and programs are really great, speaking from the person who is actually participating in one. And it really stimulates you to be creative, to take risks, to think, to be independent in a way you think. So I really believe that this kind of initiatives are necessary to build a society where people can work towards their goals and shared goals. As you can see, I'm very excited about the program. I'm not saying that because Lieven made me know. It's true. I am.
No, that's absolutely wonderful to hear firsthand how the program is affecting you and just is an enjoyable thing to be a part of, which I think is one of the best things that we can ask for. It's just that people are having a good time and they feel fulfilled by something.
Yeah, education shouldn't be a painful journey. It should be fun.
Absolutely, couldn't agree more. So thank you so much once again for coming. This has been a really nice afternoon chat and getting to know about the 3ID labs and hearing from Lieven and Daria. Thank you to my wonderful panel, Lieven and Daria, and thank you for the audience for coming. It's been great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to today's discussion. Follow UIIN on LinkedIn, and if you're enjoying our podcast, make sure to subscribe, rate, and review it in your podcast platform of choice to help other people find this content too.